Welcome to A Sound Constitution on 101.7 CHLY Radio.
A health promotion show brought to you by VIU nursing students.
Over the next hour, we will be demystifying health issues.
Thanks for tuning in.
Good morning, listeners. Thanks for tuning in to A Sound Constitution on 101.7 CHLY Radio in Nanaimo. My name is Brittany, and I'm in the studio with Allison, Sophia, and Jade. And today we are talking about health and wellness in middle adulthood. This season we've been looking into Erik Erikson's theory of psychosocial development, and for this population we're looking at the 7th of the 8 stages, generativity versus stagnation. This stage takes place during middle adulthood between the ages of approximately 40 and 65 years. During this time, adults strive to create or nurture things that will outlast them, often by parenting children or contributing to positive changes that benefit other people. Contributing to society and doing things to benefit future generations are important needs at the generativity versus stagnation stage. Generativity refers to making your mark on the world, be it through caring for others, creating and accomplishing things that make the world a better place, or other ways that make individuals feel they are contributing to their community and society. While stagnation, on the other hand, refers to the quote-unquote failure or perceived failure to find ways of contributing to the greater good. These individuals may feel disconnected or uninvolved with their community and with society as a whole. On the docket for today's show, we'll hear from community members who generously offered their opinions about what seems to be a milestone age, 40. We will also look at the topics of retirement, screening tests, and risk factors in middle adulthood. Some myths will be busted and much more. So stay tuned and stay healthy, Vancouver Island. Up next, your opinion. It matters.
Hey, you!
Who, me?
Yeah, you! We want to hear what you have to say, because
your opinion matters!
So the topic of today's show got me thinking about how we view getting older at different stages in life. You know that feeling when you enter grade 8 and you see the senior students as just so cool and so grown up, like they must know exactly what they're all about. So actual 40-year-olds appear as an almost entirely different species. They're busy, they're in control, they pay bills, love politics, and they spend a lot of time drinking coffee while everyone waits for them to check their schedules. That's adulthood when you're a kid. That's 40. We asked some community members their thoughts on turning 40 for those who have yet to reach the milestone, and we asked others to share their insights on what looking back at 40 is like for them. Thanks to everyone who shared their thoughts, because your opinion matters.
Why does it say 38 and not 40?
Because your mom wants to be 38. Let's not mention it again.
On your form, you said you were born in 1974, but your paper, it said 72.
It's 1974.
Oh, wait. On your last form, you said that you were born in 1975.
I've been working on my rewrite.
I lie about my age, okay?
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
I've made a list. It's the do better list. We're 40 years old. If we don't do it now, when are we going to do it? Your eyes are kind of glazing over.
No, I'm processing it all.
Okay, so turning 40, you know what they say about 40 is the new 30 and 30 is the new 20 and all that? It's totally true, because I finished school at university in 2007 when I was, 26? And then I went off to professional school, and then I started my career, and now at, 36? Yeah, I'm 36. I'm about to be 37. No, I'm about to be 36. Yeah, I'm about to be 36. Now, 10 years into my career, I just am starting to feel like I know what I'm doing at that. And I've, finally paid off debt. And finally, it's like life is starting right now. But my body hasn't broken down. Because I'm still youngish. So, I think 40 is, no biggie.
When I was a teenager and very aware of the aging process, I remember I had the notion that 32 was the age of an adult. 32 years old seemed like the balance. That was when finally I'll be taken seriously. And I think I am being taken seriously more often now than I was when I was a teenager. Anybody would agree with that. But 40 has always held no weight for me. For some reason, my brain said 32 was the age of becoming a grown-up, and there isn't really any other age in the spectrum that stood out. And I don't know if this is a cultural thing or not, but I've never been afraid of aging. The only thing that gets to me is that my body is falling apart already, and so that's a frightening prospect. But the number, I don't know. I made up some other number that I thought was important, and 40 never really mattered. I'm in my mid-30s, which I know is young to be saying things like body falling apart, but I have Tourette's syndrome, and one of the problems with Tourette's syndrome is that you get these repetitive physical tics. There are vocal tics too, that's like the classic Tourette's syndrome cliche of shouting swear words or making animal sounds or whatever. And that for sure, some people have that. But in my case, it's mostly physical tics. But they're repetitive, basically isometric exercises that are incessant. And that causes wear and tear. So it causes arthritis and tendinitis and that kind of thing. And so I find myself getting, older and older and older in my body, even though my brain still feels like I did when I was a teenager. And I think that the aging process happens a little bit more rapidly for me. And that might be one of the reasons why the number 40 never seemed particularly significant. Because I think that part of aging is relative.
40. Well, I feel like my physical peak was like 28, and then I kind of started to slide from then. But emotionally and psychologically, everything has just been getting better and better. So now looking at mid-30s, everything's pretty great. So I look forward to 40. I feel like it might be like the last hurrah before old age starts to set in. But at least we have 40 to look forward to.
40 feels really far away. I looked forward to 30. I was doing a program and I was going to be done by 30, and that was the goal, and it didn't happen, and the world didn't end, and life goes on. And 40 is 9 years away. I haven't figured out what my next 10-year plan is, but when I do, I'll probably aim to have it done by 40, and I'll miss that deadline, and life will go on, and that's just how aging goes. It seems to go faster as you get older, but otherwise not much changes.
40 is often seen as a milestone age, so how did you feel at 40?
I thought that at that age, by that time, I would know it all. I would have it all figured out, and I would be more self-assured. However, that's not what happened, and looking back, I would have to say that a big cause for that feeling that way was too much alcohol. Just suppressing what I really, instead of getting to the root of what I was feeling, I was numbing myself.
If you could go back in time, what advice would you give to your 40-year-old self?
Well, again, not to drink so much. Drinking's fine. I am not against it. I just feel that if a person finds that they're doing it too much and that it's a necessary thing every day, they can't really function. I was getting there. Mm-hmm. Can't really function without a drink, and more than one drink, like finishing a bottle of wine, to look inward. I think that's a signal. And if we listen to what is going on inside, that doesn't mean you have to stop drinking, but ask some questions, and then things seem to fall into place better. We talked about milestones, and 40 wasn't one for me. That's about the only thing I can remember. 50 was fabulous, and I didn't expect that either. I expected to be not as active, not having as much fun. That's when I started to feel more self-confidence and just really able to enjoy life more. And 60s, I have to say, is even better.
So 40. I remember thinking when I was in my 30s, I remember thinking that 29 was old, but 30 wasn't that old. Like when I turned 30, I thought, well, 29 seemed old. And I repeated that thought when I turned 40. But I think my thoughts now that that's long gone is really just in your 20s, you are finding out where you're going to be and what you're going to do. Certainly in my generation. In your 30s, you develop your skills, you set yourself up. When you hit 40, it seems to me that you're at your peak of earning. This is where you're earning, you know your job. It's easy to make a living. It's easy. You've got your act together. It's easy to get things done. And so I can only sort of think in the way of advice. How would I advise somebody? I'm saying, when you get to 40, this is where you're going to establish yourself. Work through your 40s. I made a change in life at 40 or 42 or something like that. And I kind of think that might have been a mistake. When you're settled at 40 and things are working for you, push through it, make that happen.
All right, so 40. When I was in my 20s, and when you're a teenager, you don't even think about it. You might as well be dead. You're thinking 40 is just really old. But when you're in your 20s, you're looking forward to it. You're not looking forward to it, but you're looking ahead to it. And it still seems pretty far in the future. It's not very realistic to you yet. But when you're in your 30s, you're starting to go to parties. 40th birthday parties, the over the hill party, and you're getting a little further in your 30s and you're getting closer and closer to that 40, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, it's going to happen to me soon, whatever. But when it did happen, I almost felt nothing. I remember saying to my husband that I'm totally ready to be 40. This is great. I feel like I've made it in the world. I'm mature. I've got a family. I've got a great job, and 40 just didn't feel like I thought it was going to feel. I was still fit enough. I could still dance and do the teaching that I was doing, and so it just wasn't the horrendous thing I thought it was going to be. So I have good thoughts of being in my 40s. When I turned 50, that seemed a bit more monumental, only because it was the half century. There was a bit more of a glory to it, But 40, most people are in the job that they've geared themselves for, and if they have a career, they're probably doing, fairly well at it by then. And if they're going to have a family, they've probably started it by then. So it just felt comfortable to me. I thought, okay, I'm ready for this.
A big thank you to everyone who lent their voices and opinions to our show. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to A Sound Constitution on 101.7 CHLY in Nanaimo. Up next, we'll hear from Allison about the transition from working life to retirement. Off to you, Allison.
Hey everyone, it's Allison. It's time to talk about retirement. Adulting can be hard. But can you imagine what it would be like to go from working 5 days a week for almost your entire life to not working at all? Here are some tips and tricks on how to make the transition from work to retirement a little easier. For some people, retirement planning conjures up images of long days free from the demands of the daily grind, but for others, the prospect of leaving the workforce may be daunting or even a frightening transition. For most, this major milestone will elicit a mixture of emotions that fall somewhere between anticipation and apprehension. Retirement is, in fact, a complex experience for almost everyone, characterized by gains and losses and tremendous shifts in identity and routines. Here are some tricks to make this a little easier. Number 1. First, give yourself some time. Understand that this will be a process. Your transition into retirement won't happen overnight, and your emotions may shift from one day to the next. Number 2, assess your resources. Consider the things you turn to during other periods of change in your life. To help you identify ways to cope with your transition into retirement, ask yourself 3 questions. Can I change what's challenging me? If not, can I change the way I see it? And finally, can I reduce my stress level through meditation, exercise, therapy, etc.? This will help you target areas that need work. Build your psychological portfolio. We need our financial portfolios, but forget about our psychological portfolios, which includes our identity, our relationships, and our need for a sense of purpose slow spurg. Craft a new identity by imagining what you'd put on your new business card: world traveler, gardener, artist. Then build a new routine, whether it's a daily trip to the local coffee shop or a walk with a friend. Number 4, maintain friendships. Numerous studies have shown that friendship, even if it's just with one confidant, reduces stress, says Deitch. Make it a point to connect regularly with friends and join groups or take classes in subjects you're interested in, which will lead to new friends. Men may especially find this helpful since they tend to form alliances based on shared interests and activities rather than relationships. Number 5, exercise. Not only will getting active increase mood-boosting, stress-relieving chemicals such as endorphins and serotonin, it'll also increase your overall health and help ward off illness. Number 6, make a mission statement. Write down a list of things you want to do and things you regret not doing, and then identify ways you can achieve these goals. Number 7, find your path. As you consider your options, think about whether you want to spend your free time doing something similar to what you did in your job, or if you want to try something wholly different. Exploring something you've never done can be a great way to stimulate your mind and to make new friends. If nothing is working, seek help. No matter what you choose to do with your time in retirement, says experts, try to get involved and stay involved. Being inactive and feeling lethargic and depressed are signs that you may need to seek advice from a mental health professional. Keeping a positive attitude about what tomorrow may bring, even if you feel down today, can also be a big help. That's all from me for now. Off to Sophia.
Hello, listeners. I hope you're enjoying today's episode of A Sound Constitution, where we focus on adult health. I'm going to be talking a little bit about screening for prevention and early treatment. Screening tests are an important part of your preventative health care. For people between the ages of 30 and 49, these tests are used for early detection of some of the more common and potentially deadly diseases, such as cancers, diabetes, and heart disease, that begin to affect people in their middle years. These tests can help catch certain illnesses and conditions in their earliest and most curable stages, even before you notice symptoms. With information from screening tests, your healthcare provider can work with you to develop preventative measures that will improve your health and can even extend your healthy years. For example, a routine cholesterol test could reveal your risk for developing heart disease, allowing you to take preventative steps, such as lifestyle changes, before you develop a serious condition. Today, we will be focusing on screening for 2 common health challenges for adults: breast cancer and diabetes. Breast cancer is the second leading cause of cancer death in North American women. Regular screening can help detect tumors at an early stage when they are most treatable. Several methods are available for screening, including mammography, which is an imaging test that is specifically effective at detecting breast cancer several years before symptoms even develop. So let's take a look at some recommendations for women in their 30s. This is for women without any known risk factors. The American College of Obstetrics and Gynecologists recommend that a breast exam by a healthcare professional happen every 1 to 3 years as part of a regular health exam. Breast self-examinations are an option for women starting in their 20s, and women should report any changes that they feel in their breast to their healthcare provider. Mammograms are generally not recommended for women younger than 40 with no known risk factors. Now for recommendations for a woman in their 40s without known risk factors. Starting at age 40, women should have a breast exam by a health professional yearly as part of their regular health exam. Breast self-examinations are also an option, and again, women should report any changes they feel in their breasts to their healthcare provider. The American Medical Association recommended that women be offered a mammogram annually starting at age 40. The U.S. Preventative Task Services Force says that women aged 40 to 49, it is their decision when they start regular screening, and this should be an individual one, taking into consideration factors such as women's risk tolerance. The American College of Physicians says that women aged 40 to 49 years should discuss the benefits and harms of screening with their healthcare professional. If the choice is to undergo screening, it should be done every 2 years. So as we can see, there's a little bit of discrepancy out there around exactly how often mammography should be done. So it's best to talk to your healthcare provider, and in collaboration, you two can agree on a screening routine that works best for you. It's important to be aware of the risk factors around breast cancer, as if you have these, be sure to take extra caution. Family history and genetics can contribute to a high lifetime risk. Other factors include a previous history of breast cancer, obesity, beginning your period at a younger age, having your first child after the age of 35, never giving birth, postmenopausal hormone therapy, beginning menopause at an older age, and alcohol consumption. The American Cancer Society recommends that women with a high lifetime risk be screened with magnetic resonance imaging, or an MRI, in addition to mammography annually, beginning at age 30 and continuing as long as they are in good health. If you suspect that you are at an increased risk for breast cancer, you should consult your healthcare provider and consider developing an individualized screening program. Now on to the second chronic illness we are looking at today, diabetes. According to Diabetes Canada, it is estimated that 1 in 10 deaths in Canadian adults was attributable to diabetes in recent years. People with diabetes are over 3 times more likely to be hospitalized with cardiovascular disease, 12 times more likely to be hospitalized with end-stage renal disease, and over 20 times more likely to be hospitalized with non-traumatic lower limb amputations compared to the general population. Diabetes contributes to 30% of strokes, 40% of heart attacks, 50% of kidney failure requiring dialysis, and 75% of non-traumatic lower limb amputations. It is also the leading cause of vision loss. 30% of people with diabetes have clinically relevant depressive symptoms. These stats go to prove the importance of ensuring early and comprehensive screening. We're going to take a look at some risk factors to be aware of. So the first one is being overweight or having a body mass index equal or greater to 25. This is a major risk factor for developing type 2 diabetes. Some other risk factors that are related to your own health include physical inactivity, having a high blood pressure. This is also called hypertension, and it means having a blood pressure of 140/90 or greater, or if you're receiving therapy for hypertension already. Having a history of cardiovascular disease, and having conditions associated with insulin resistance, such as severe obesity, are other risk factors. To look at some family-related risk factors, they include having a parent or sibling with diabetes, and being of African American, Latino, Native American, Asian American, or Pacific Islander descent. Women's risk factors include delivering a baby weighing more than 99 pounds, or having gestational diabetes, having polycystic ovarian syndrome as well. So what can be done to mitigate the risks and catch it early? Screening tests. These include fasting glucose. This test measures the level of glucose in the blood after not eating for 8 to 12 hours. A1C, also called hemoglobin A1C or glycohemoglobin, and this test evaluates the average amount of glucose in the blood over the last 2 to 3 months and has been recommended more recently than others as another test for screening for diabetes. A 2-hour glucose tolerance test. This test involves drawing a fasting blood test followed by having a person drink 75 grams of a glucose drink and then drawing another sample 2 hours after the consumption of the glucose. If the initial result is abnormal, the test is repeated on another day. If the repeat test also is abnormal, a diagnosis of diabetes is made. So let's look at some recommendations. The American Diabetes Association and the U.S. Preventative Services Task Force recommends the following. If you are age 45 or older, you should be screened. If you are younger than 45 but overweight or have any other risk factors, consider diabetes screening. Even if initial testing results are normal, get repeat testing at least every 3 years. If you have been diagnosed with prediabetes, get tested early. The American Association of Clinical Endocrinologists also recommends diabetes screening for asymptomatic people with risk factors, as well as those on antipsychotic therapy for schizophrenia or those who have severe bipolar disease. As public health experts work to educate the public on what to do to avoid this disease and its serious complications, Be aware that healthy eating habits and activity choices can lower your risk of developing type 2 diabetes and suffering complications from the disease. So these were just 2 examples of diseases that can be screened for prevention or treated early. Others include cervical cancer, high cholesterol, HIV, obesity, chlamydia and gonorrhea, colorectal cancer, prostate cancer, tuberculosis, and hepatitis B. For more information on these, visit www.labtestsonline.org/understanding/wellness/adult. Or you can have these conversations with your healthcare provider. Well, that's all from me for now. I'll pass it off to Allison, who's going to give some insight on how to avoid a midlife crisis.
Hello, listeners. This is the Sound Constitution on 101.7 CHLY in Nanaimo. And if you're just tuning in, today's show is on the wonderful life of adulthood. We are talking midlife. Now, I'm sure when you hear those words, you think of the dreaded midlife crisis. Not everyone in their midlife experiences this, but it is possible. I wanted to inform our audience today on how to avoid a midlife crisis as a point of prevention. Midlife thriver Jane Matthews, authors of Midlife Manifesto, offers a toolkit to plan the rest of your life and offers some practical steps to help navigate and transform the turbulent, exciting years that are a person's midlife into a midlife opportunity. Here's a little insight. Number 1, work out exactly where you want your life to lead. What is your vision? Don't be a piece of flotsam drifting aimlessly along saying, I don't know where the time goes. Decide what you really want to do with your life, who you want to be, how you want to live, and consciously work towards it. There are lots of different ways to help you identify your vision. Imagine your perfect day, or produce a kick-butt vision board, or write your own eulogy, or your future life in 6 words, or just jot down a good old bucket list. It'll be very clear where your heart is telling you to go. You should be smiling in anticipation. Number 2, write your own midlife manifesto, your life plan. Jane says that writing my own midlife manifesto has had a profound impact on her life. I feel more in control and happy that I'm pointing my life in a particular direction. Now it's your turn. It's amazing how many lists women write, shopping lists, to-do lists, Christmas present lists, but so few of us actually put time aside to write a life plan. To begin with, think of areas that are most important to you. Now consider each aspect really carefully. Get inspired. Research, read, Google yourself senseless. Write down what you want to achieve in your area of your life and how you intend to get there. The 3 cornerstones to every woman's midlife manifesto should be your body, relationships, and finances. Number 3, my body. Finally grow to love it. For the first half of our lives, which are largely lived in automatic, most of us took our health for granted. Now it's time to switch to manual and be proactive about our health. Instead of disliking and finding fault in my body, I try to think of it as her, as a wise and supportive friend. If you look after your body, she will look after you in years to come. And really, you know your body well enough to know what it will respond to best. Predictably, but sensibly, it boils down to exercise and food. I like what Dr. Phil says Jane, about exercise. You don't have to want to do it, you just have to do it. Put it in your diary and get up earlier. As for food, the guidelines are clear, and I'm not going to patronize you by repeating them. It's about choices. You send your body a message whether you care for it or not. Number 4, work on your relationships. Family and friends are the most important contributor to a happy old age, but are you really investing in and building support that works for you? Like the elastic in your knickers, so don't appreciate it until it's gone. Friends are precious and are like gardens. They need watering and fertilizing and weeding too. Inevitably, in midlife, marriages evolve. Don't sit by and watch as your life becomes parallel train tracks. Consciously work on merging them and keeping them that way. If your parents are alive, you are lucky. Tell them how much you love them. Record their voices and their stories, and them telling you that they love you. And make sure your children get to know them, Jane says. As for children themselves, one of the most important jobs we can do as parents is give our children memories for when they are older. And love yourself first. Your relationship with yourself is the most important relationship in your life. Yet, curiously, one that we only begin to examine and explore in midlife. I've learned that you have to be your best friend. Happiness is a dodgy bank heist. It's an inside job. Number 5. Be financially independent. There are a number of women who crackle with intelligence but have no clue about their financial situation. You must be the ruler of your own financial destiny, whether you're in a relationship or not. A full life is ready and waiting for all of us, but you have to go to do it. It won't come to you. Define where you want to go. Point your arrow. Let it go. Engage with life, and always, always trust your instincts. That's all from me.
Mythbusters!
Hello, listeners, and guess what time it is? That's right, it's Mythbustin' time. Usually we have 2 people to do Mythbusters, but this week it's just me, myself, and I.
It's just me, myself, and I. Solo ride until I die, 'cause I got me for life.
All right. So this week we're going to explore some of the common myths and misconceptions about aging. So Jade, as people age, their ability to learn often stops, right? Well, actually, Jade, learning patterns may change and the speed of learning may diminish, but the basic capacity to learn is retained. Is it easier to learn new things than it is to recall things from the past? Well, in reality, the exact opposite is true. It's often easier to remember things from the past than it is to learn new things. Forgetfulness is likely to indicate the onset of dementia, right, Jade? Well, actually, Jade, memory loss can be caused by medications, medical conditions, or by depression related to life events. Forgetfulness may be an early sign of dementia, but it does not necessarily mean a person will be diagnosed with dementia. But everybody as they get older will develop dementia, right, Jade? Well, no. The reality is that only 6 to 8% of people over the age of 65 have dementia, and about 1/3 of those over the age of 85 have some form of dementia symptoms. Do all old people get depressed? No. Most older adults, most of the time, are not depressed. Depression is not a normal part of growing old, but rather an illness that needs to be treated. Age alone is not a risk factor for depression. So Jade, is depression at an older age later in your life more difficult to treat than depression when you're younger? No. The reality is that the course of depression in the elderly is identical to that of younger people. The response of depression to treatment appears to be as positive as other life stages. Is depression later in life typically due to psychological factors? Not really. The reality is that depression in late life is frequently comorbid with physical illnesses such as stroke, heart disease, diabetes, hip fracture, for example. If caregivers misinterpret the nature and different forms of depression, they may not seek diagnosis and treatment. So if an older person doesn't look depressed, like they're pretty happy seeming, he or she doesn't feel depressed, right? Well, in reality, depression often causes physical problems such as loss of energy, low appetite and weight, trouble sleeping, social withdrawal, and complaints of pain. Depression can also make someone agitated and delusional. Okay, but if an older person looks depressed, he or she must feel depressed, right? No, not so much. Depression is often mistaken for apathy, which has been shown to be a different syndrome from depression. So Jade, is aging itself depressing? Well, no. Contrary to the myth that aging is depressing, many studies find that seniors are amongst the happiest age group. Happiness level by age follow a U-shaped curve, with self-reported levels of happiness at their lowest at age 40, but then growing thereafter. In addition, those who think aging is depressing also believe that it makes seniors grumpier. People who are unhappy in their younger years will likely continue to be so in their later years, and similarly, good-natured people continue on a happy trajectory as they age. In other words, one's attitudes come down to their individual personality, not age group. Hey Jade, does aging lead to loneliness? No, though social isolation can be a problem for adults as they age, especially those who have limited mobility, lack of transportation, or may have recently lost a spouse. Most older adults are able to stay socially engaged. Activities and visits with families and friends, and at places such as the local senior center or place of worship are also help seniors stay socially active and happy. So Jade, doesn't aging dull your wits and inevitably cause dementia? Well, no, not exactly. While aging can create cognitive changes, older people may perform better in certain areas of intelligence and poorer in others. For example, while seniors may have slower reaction times, mental capacities that depend most heavily on accumulated experience and knowledge, like settling disputes and enlarging one's vocabulary, clearly get better over time. What's more, dementia is anything but inevitable. According to the Alzheimer's Association, only 5% of those over 65 will develop dementia. Well, Jade, doesn't aging make you less creative? Well, no, not exactly, Jade. There are countless examples that dispel the myth that aging makes you less creative. In fact, many artists actually find their calling or achieve mastery in their later years. A great example is the immortal Grandma Moses. Anna Marie Robinson Moses was an ordinary, unassuming woman who lived on a farm in upstate New York in the mid-1800s. After her husband passed away, Mrs. Moses, as she liked to call herself, transitioned from farm work to a quieter life of embroidering for fun and making delicious preserves for her now-grown children. But when arthritis made embroidering too painful, a friend suggested she try painting. Mrs. Moses took to painting scenes of royal rural life and even hung a few of her paintings in the local drugstore. Her paintings caught the eye of a prominent art collector who was passing through town, and the rest was history. Her first one-woman art show was held in 1940 when Moses was already 80 years old. She became famous and was dubbed Grandma Moses, a name that stuck. She continued to paint well into the age of 101 years old. So doesn't aging make you unable to adapt to new situations? Well, no. Older people are not only able to adapt to new situations, they are actually experts at adapting. By the time one has become a senior, they have had to adapt to numerous challenges and transitions in life, many of which could have certainly been challenging. Seniors may be slower to change than their opinions, but one's of humanity's greatest traits, adaptability, is greatly retained as we grow old. So Jade, doesn't aging erase your libido? Well, no. However, discussing the love and sex lives of seniors is largely taboo in our culture and has led to the stereotype that elderly are sexless. This stereotype is harmful because it can cause seniors to have conflicted feelings or unnecessary guilt about their sexuality, while simultaneously causing younger people to hold misconceptions about aging and the elderly. Research has found that sexual activity and enjoyment do not decrease with age. People with physical health, a sense of well-being, and a willing partner are more likely to continue sexual relations. People who are bored with their partner, mentally or physically tired, afraid of failure, or overindulge in food and drink are unlikely to engage in sexual activity. These reasons do not differ a great deal when considering whether or not a person will engage in sex as they age. Does aging make you more religious, Jade? No, not actually. Seniors certainly have a higher rate of religious tendencies than younger people nowadays, but this is a generational phenomenon rather than an aging phenomenon. If you regularly attended church growing up, you're likely to continue to do so as you age. Today's seniors haven't become more religious with time. Instead, they grew up in a time when more people went to church, which is why seniors are the most religious age group as compared to others. So Jade, older people aren't really interested in the outside world, are they? Well, no, that's not really the case. The over 65 age group uses the internet a lot. Far from being passive TV watchers, more than 100,000 of those 65 to 75 and older have been frequent travelers, using Elder Hostel to better understand other cultures around the world. Staying involved educationally has also been a focus of many colleges and universities who have designed programs for older residents or for the aging adult who want to learn while on vacation. And many people, either by choice or necessity, stay involved in the workforce beyond the typical retirement age. So older people don't really want or need close relationships, right? Well, no, that's not really the case. We as humans are very social creatures. Families, tribes, teams, and whole organizations have a better chance of survival and actually thriving when they are socially connected. The need for meaningful relationships does not change with age. However, there may be fewer people to relate to as we age, and there may be physical and mental barriers which arise with age. Maintaining social relationships allows older adults to reap numerous rewards, intellectual challenges, maintaining information processing skills, feedback, and just plain sharing of feelings. So Jade, I heard that older people contribute less to society. Well, actually, Jade, that's not entirely the case at all. With years of personal skills and professional expertise, older adults are highly valued employees and colleagues as well as volunteers. Senior Corps, has 500,000 volunteers who contribute to their communities by mentoring, helping small businesses, assisting in placing foster children, and other valuable endeavors. Older workers have strong work ethic and are great mentors and models for younger generations. As people age, they get more set in their ways, right? Well, no, not really. Older people tend to have high levels of mental resilience. The older generation's ability to accept and rebound from adversity has been demonstrated many times. For instance, Outward Bound was founded when the British Navy noted rates of survival among older sailors in World War II were much higher than those of younger sailors. Sharing skills such as self-confidence, self-sufficiency, and the general attitude of toughness found in older sailors helped the young sailors thrive. Hey Jade, older people are impoverished, aren't they? So Jade, older people can't make good decisions about important issues, can they? Well, no. Age brings wisdom. Cognitive skills are based on a lifetime of experience and education. Shared decision-making, whether about medical choice, financial decision, or anything else related to an older person, should involve that person. Participation by everyone will improve outcomes. Jade, don't older people lose their desire to live? No. That's totally not the case. Older folks become accepting of death when they have a sense of control over it. A comfortable and controlled environment is desired by most. While people want to live and live well, no one who is mentally stable desires to shorten his or her life. Hasn't science answered all our questions about aging? Well, no. We have so much more to learn and experience. As we live longer and better, we will face even more questions, which will stimulate us to seek answers. Consider 90-year-olds are the fastest growing group in our country.
Up next, we have an audio clip from TEDx by Robert Waldinger about what makes a good life. It's time for some reflecting. Enjoy.
What keeps us healthy and happy as we go through life? If you were going to invest now in your future best self, where would you put your time and your energy? There was a recent survey of millennials asking them what their most important life goals were. And over 80% said that a major life goal for them was to get rich. And another 50% of those same young adults said that another major life goal was to become famous. And we're constantly told to lean into work, to push harder and achieve more. We're given the impression that these are the things that we need to go after in order to have a good life. Pictures of entire lives, of the choices that people make and how those choices work out for them, those pictures are almost impossible to get. Most of what we know about human life, we know from asking people to remember the past. And as we know, hindsight is anything but 20/20. We forget vast amounts of what happens to us in life, and sometimes memory is downright creative. But what if we could watch entire lives as they unfold through time? What if we could study people from the time that they were teenagers all the way into old age to see what really keeps people happy and healthy? We did that. The Harvard study of adult development may be the longest study of adult life that's ever been done. For 75 years, we've tracked the lives of 724 men. Year after year, asking about their work, their home lives, their health, and of course, asking all along the way without knowing how their life stories were going to turn out. Studies like this are exceedingly rare. Almost all projects of this kind fall apart within a decade because too many people drop out of the study, or funding for the research dries up, or the researchers get distracted, or they die, and nobody moves the ball further down the field. But through a combination of luck and the persistence of several generations of researchers, this study has survived. About 60 of our original 724 men are still alive, still participating in the study, most of them in their 90s. And we are now beginning to study the more than 2,000 children of these men. And I'm the fourth director of the study. Since 1938, we've tracked the lives of two groups of men. The first group started in the study when they were sophomores at Harvard College. They all finished college during World War II, and then most went off to serve in the war. And the second group that we've followed was a group of boys from Boston's poorest neighborhoods. Boys who were chosen for the study specifically because they were from some of the most troubled and disadvantaged families in the Boston of the 1930s. Most lived in tenements, many without hot and cold running water. When they entered the study, all of these teenagers were interviewed, they were given medical exams. We went to their homes and we interviewed their parents. And then these teenagers grew up into adults who entered all walks of life. They became factory workers and lawyers and bricklayers and doctors, one president of the United States. Some developed alcoholism, a few developed schizophrenia. Some climbed the social ladder from the bottom all the way to the very top, and some made that journey in the opposite direction. The founders of this study would never in their wildest dreams have imagined that I would be standing here today, 75 years later, telling you that the study still continues. Every 2 years, our patient and dedicated research staff calls up our men and asks them if we can send them yet one more set of questions about their lives. Many of the inner city Boston men ask us, "Why do you keep wanting to study me? My life just isn't that interesting." The Harvard men never asked that question. To get the clearest picture of these lives, we don't just send them questionnaires. We interview them in their living rooms. We get their medical records from their doctors. We draw their blood. We scan their brains. We talk to their children. We videotape them talking with their wives about their deepest concerns. And when about a decade ago we finally asked the wives if they would join us as members of the study, many of the women said, "You know, it's about time." So what have we learned? What are the lessons that come from the tens of thousands of pages of information that we've generated on these lives? Well, the lessons aren't about wealth or fame or working harder and harder. The clearest message that we get from this 75-year study is this: good relationships keep us happier and healthier. Period. We've learned 3 big lessons about relationships. The first is that social connections are really good for us and that loneliness kills. It turns out that people who are more socially connected to family, to friends, to community are happier, they're physically healthier, and they live longer than people who are less well connected. And the experience of loneliness turns out to be toxic. People who are more isolated than they want to be from others find that they are less happy, their health declines earlier in midlife, their brain functioning declines sooner, and they live shorter lives than people who are not lonely. And the sad fact is that at any given time, more than 1 in 5 Americans will report that they're lonely. And we know that you can be lonely in a crowd and you can be lonely in a marriage. So the second big lesson that we learned is that it's not just the number of friends you have, and it's not whether or not you're in a committed relationship, but it's the quality of your close relationships that matters. It turns out that living in the midst of conflict is really bad for our health. High conflict marriages, for example, without much affection, turn out to be very bad for our health, perhaps worse than getting divorced. And living in the midst of good, warm relationships is protective. Once we had followed our men all the way into their 80s, we wanted to look back at them at midlife and to see if we could predict who was going to grow into a happy, healthy octogenarian and who wasn't. And when we gathered together everything we knew about them at age 50, it wasn't their middle-aged cholesterol levels that predicted how they were going to grow old. It was how satisfied they were in their relationships. The people who were the most satisfied in their relationships at age 50 were the healthiest at age 80. And good, close relationships seem to buffer us from some of the slings and arrows of getting old. Our most happily partnered men and women reported in their 80s that on the days when they had more physical pain, their moods stayed just as happy. But the people who were in unhappy relationships, on the days when they reported more physical pain, it was magnified by more emotional pain. And the third big lesson that we learn about relationships and our health is that good relationships don't just protect our bodies, they protect our brains. It turns out that being in a securely attached relationship to another person in your 80s is protective. That the people who are in relationships where they really feel they can count on the other person in times of need, those people's memories stay sharper longer. And the people in relationships where they feel they really can't count on the other one, those are the people who experience earlier memory decline. And those good relationships, they don't have to be smooth all the time. Some of our octogenarian couples could bicker with each other day in and day out. But as long as they felt that they could really count on the other when the going got tough, those arguments didn't take a toll on their memories. So, this message that good, close relationships are good for our health and well-being, this is wisdom that's as old as the hills. Why is this so hard to get and so easy to ignore? Well, we're human. What we'd really like is a quick fix, something we can get that'll make our lives good and keep them that way. Relationships are messy and they're complicated, and the hard work of tending to family and friends, that's not sexy or glamorous. It's also lifelong. It never ends. The people in our 75-year study who were the happiest in retirement were the people who had actively worked to replace workmates with new playmates. Just like the millennials in that recent survey, many of our men, when they were starting out as young adults, really believed that fame and wealth and high achievement were what they needed to go after to have a good life. But over and over these 75 years, our study has shown that the people who fared the best were the people who leaned into relationships with family, with friends, with community. So what about you? Let's say you're 25, or you're 40, or you're 60. What might leaning into relationships even look like? Well, the possibilities are practically endless. It might be something as simple as replacing screen time with people time, or livening up a stale relationship by doing something new together, long walks or date nights, or reaching out to that family member who you haven't spoken to in years, because those all too common family feuds take a terrible toll on the people who hold the grudges. I'd like to close with a quote from Mark Twain. More than a century ago, he was looking back on his life, and he wrote this: "There isn't time, so brief is life, for bickerings, apologies, heartburnings, callings to account. There is only time for loving, and but an instant, so to speak, for that. The good life is built with good relationships."
If you're just tuning in, you're listening to A Sound Constitution on 101.7 CHLY in Nanaimo, and that was an audio clip from a TEDx by Robert Waldinger on finding happiness.
Thanks for listening to A Sound Constitution on 101.7 CHLY Radio.
For more information, questions, or comments, please visit our Facebook page at A Sound Constitution.
Tune in again next Thursday morning from 10 to 11.
Stay healthy, Vancouver Island.